await the outcome of the meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin upon the new phase or scope for global diplomacy. What should be the principles and features of diplomacy in contemporary society, and how can diplomacy thrive in the context of multilateralism and heightened geopolitics? The recent Trump-Putin Alaska summit drew more attention as to what should be the ideal characteristics of international relations and global diplomacy in contemporary and complex world. It's a great, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you to yet another compelling edition of your knowledge sharing program. It is Global Insight in conjunction with Globals, and we are together with a team of extreme panel ready to unpack the differing perspectives and analyze what the Alaska summit means or meant for the trajectory of the Ukraine conflict, and particularly international diplomacy at large. And thus we are going to uncover in the course of this program, noting that the anticipation and anxiety that characterized the pre-era of this meeting, historic meeting between Putin and Trump, actually ended with some sort of controversies, as the world did not have a clear or highly expected outcome of the meeting pertaining resolving the conflict in Ukraine. This and more we are going to uncover in the course of the program. Thank you so much. I'm your host, CLARISSE WIYDORVEN, and I join you right after the jingle. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Global Insider, and we continue to focus on topics of utmost importance having global ramifications. We continue to review or revisit the August 15 meeting that took place between the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, pertaining the situation in Ukraine. And like we underlined in the preamble, it was met with so much zest and anxiety at the same time from global elite nations of the global south, the international organizations. But then the outcome of the meeting became very problematic, given that no concrete or much anticipated outcome was reached between these two leaders. And it brings us again now to asking this very important question: if the outcome of the meeting actually spiraled us to the new phase of global diplomacy, which is very important in contemporary society. And of course, we are going to go right away to uncovering the panel that will unpack or decode some of the very important issues pertaining the August 15 Alaska meeting and how it's changing the diplomatic trajectory of the global world. And to the United States of America, we are going to welcome ACHILLE, who is a corporate finance expert and also CEO of Washington Valuation Group. It's always a pleasure having you accepting to share insight on very compelling topics like that, like the one we have this day, dear EKEU.
Thank you, Clarisse. Thank you very much for the invitation once more. Appreciate it. This topic is very valuable for our listeners today and the whole continent of Africa, and as a matter of fact, the whole world. So I'm pleased to be part of this conversation. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It's always a pleasure, and we also appreciate you for giving importance to this rendezvous. Like you've said, it is a topic that is important not just for Africa, but for countries in the global world, especially nations that are still very new in the sphere of global diplomacy and ramifications. And now joining us for the first time on this platform, we're going to Germany to acknowledge the presence of Dean ANDROMIDAS, who is editor and executive intelligence review. I hope I got the name correctly, Dean. Thank you for joining us this day on Global Insight.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to be on here for the first time on your platform. Yes, I think just to say a couple of words, I think the most important thing, this meeting is the meeting that I believe everyone was waiting for, and I believe it, in a certain sense, it was very successful, because the issue was not really the Ukraine. The issue was rolling back the geopolitical anti-Russian policy of the Biden administration and the current policy of Europe, which continues along the line of the Biden administration. And so the real issue was not Ukraine. It was, bringing together the United States and Russia for the first time in 4 years.
Absolutely.
And this is what is important. The Europeans demonstrated that they are, with the 7 Europeans who were there and Zelensky, I call them Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, because they proved to be totally insane and totally out of it. And I was reading TASS this morning, and it was clear that the Russians have a very, very low opinion of the Europeans and are not particularly concerned about their threats because they can't carry them out. But I'm looking forward. We have to look forward to what actually will happen following this summit. And the Ukraine might take a bit more time to resolve. But I think you're going to see probably progress vis-a-vis Russia and the United States. Do you want to, shall I go on, or did you want to go on to other speakers?
I will come back to you subsequently, Tin, and thank you, of course, for joining this conversation, and we will, of course, appreciate the insight that will come again to bring more light onto how diplomacy works and how countries need to actually redefine their standing along international diplomacy. With pleasure, we're going to also welcome Professor JAGDISH KHATRI, who is an author and global analyst. He's joining us from India. Hello to you, Professor JAGDISH. It's a pleasure.
Hello, thank you very much. Greetings from India to everyone. It's always a pleasure and privilege to be on this platform. I take it as a good platform for learning as well as sharing. With regard to the topic, I think it's most relevant topic to be discussed and debated today, because this was one serious effort for bringing peace to long-standing war. And it was, as you said, it was having high expectations. But as we see that it was very high on optics also, with red carpet being rolled over by US soldiers, and B-2 bomber fly past along with F-35, and President Trump welcoming President Putin. So it was high on optics, no doubt, but perhaps low on outcome, as our expectations were very high. But as I feel that such long-standing issues cannot be solved in one meeting. So rather than low on outcome, I would like to say it is slow on outcome. But surely we are optimistic, and let us see how the things unfold in future. So thank you. These are my initial remarks.
Absolutely, being optimistic and of course watching how events unfold and how this will eventually bring to a practical and sustainable solution that will ensure global peace, which will give again meaning, importance to the concept of globalization and international cooperation, and why not multilateralism. We are going to right off with the contextual understanding of this topic for today, revisiting the Alaska summit. Let's right off with you, Achille, aka giving a holistic understanding of the summit and how it affects the diplomacy of the global world, and particularly African countries that have been very pivotal, or maybe a main stakeholder in present day or contemporary diplomatic affairs. Achille, okay, please, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. Right. So this is a fantastic question, because from the African perspective, this summit really looked like a show, but it was necessary at least to bring the most important parties together, United States and Russia, because those are the two people that are really fighting. United States is fighting Russia through NATO and through Ukraine. And we know that because of, all the history behind it. And so it's great to see the President of the United States, showing that, it's time for this war to end. They acknowledge, I think Trump have done that a long time ago. They know that they're the one who started this war by supporting, first by expanding east side, by expanding, near Russia, which is something that they agreed not to do, and they sort of violated that word, and so they violated that agreement, and so by doing so, they started now to, include Ukraine within NATO, within European Union, and everything else, and that was a very difficult position for Russia to be in. So they decided to, stop, this progress, given the fact that pro-Russian, speakers in Ukraine, were being killed in numbers since 2014. So it's been an ongoing war, within Ukraine, killing Russian-speaking people in the Donbas region, and so it has not stopped. And every effort that Mr. Putin did to stop did not happen. And so it was necessary for him to protect the citizens of that area, and provide them with the necessary comfort and protection that they needed. So it's widely acknowledged today that that's that was caused the war, and today it's about stopping this, because the plan that they had was to destroy Russia's economy, destroy the country, and even break the country in different pieces, in several pieces. We remember the French Minister of Economy who announced on television that Russia's economy was going to be destroyed, following their decision to put a lot of sanctions on Russia. Of course, that did not happen. And we see today that it's instead Russia that is doing very well economic-wise, that is, very strong. And even though they stopped buying oil, Russian oil, and officially, we know that they're buying it, through intermediaries like India or other countries. And so same thing for gas. So it's a big hypocrisy that we're witnessing right now. From a European perspective, so it's really something to watch, and it's really it's really unbelievable what we're watching today. From the African perspective, I think it would be great that this war stops, because there are so many areas of cooperation between Russia, and China and other countries in that region that African countries would like to mobilize, to continue doing business with. And since this war has started, you know, it has been a little problem for many countries when it comes, for example, to cereals. You know, all different type of products that Ukraine and Russia and China and all these people in those regions were providing to African countries. So it would be a good idea for the war to stop, and especially for people that are dying to stop dying, because war is never a good thing. And so we're looking forward to this process continuing in a way that you know, we hope is going to you know, bring peace and calm in that region for the longest time possible. So that's the hope that we have from the African perspective.
Now that objective, when we see how conquest or occupation seems to be actually some aspects which are very embedded, okay, in the aspect of diplomacy. In the same perspective with you, Dina, still on the conceptual understanding of the meeting, I know you already gave some highlights during your introduction, but then we want to look at this problematic, given that, of course, it was successful in the fact that we saw the two leaders coming together again, especially after the start of the special military operation in 2022. Now let's look at how the outcome of the summit affected some of the principles or features of diplomacy in contemporary society, taking the Ukraine crisis as a case study. Please, you're muted.
As I said, the actual conflict, or the actual subject of the, as I see it, of the summit was not directly Ukraine, but to resolve the conflict that was created between the West and the so-called West and Russia by the previous Biden administration and the Europeans. The outcome of this is that Trump is sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as my friend Roy McGovern said. And his Jekyll side, his good side, is that he wants to have a good relationship with Russia. He wants to have arms control. This has been an issue for him for most of his political career, going back to the 80s. And he wants to have this good relationship with Putin. On the other hand, he has a Mr. Hyde, which of course we see this a lot. It's the tariff war, what's happening in Gaza, etc. Sure. But his commitment to resolving this conflict with Russia and having a cooperative relationship is important. But what we see are the Europeans who are totally I can't use any word but insane and totally unrealistic. They continue to jabber about continuing this war, about Ukraine joining NATO, about deploying troops, about Russia ready to attack Europe by the end of next year. They want to embark on a massive rearmaments program, which they don't have the economy to do it. I just heard today that France is considering going to the IMF because of its financial problems. And this is one of the outcomes. Now, I think as the Europeans get more and more discredited, that Putin and Trump might come closer together. But let me just diverse a little bit, because the cooperation between Russia and the United States, of course, is extremely important for the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And I'm also associated with the Schiller Institute, which was founded by the founder of my publication, the late economist Lyndon LaRouche. And the institute now is chaired by, and she is also the founder, is his widow, Helga Zepp-LaRouche. And she put out a proposal when this summit was first announced. And one was that in terms of Russian-US relations and the fact that it was held in Alaska, one point of cooperation would be to actually build the tunnel between the Bering Straits. This has been a discussion for 100 years, and it was in high discussion even 10 years ago. And I'm sure it somehow came up, maybe behind the doors at this summit. What did definitely come up was statements following the conference, and even before the conference, that by President Putin, that there's great scope for economic cooperation between the United States and Russia, particularly in the Arctic, which of course everyone knows that Russia is very, very busy developing their Arctic transport, their Arctic hydrocarbon resources, and they're inviting other countries to participate in that. China, of course, is participating in that. And once sanctions are lifted, the U.S. will probably once again participate in that. The other thing Helga Zepp-LaRouche proposed was that now would be a good time for Trump to attend the celebrations for the ending of World War II in the Pacific that will take place, I believe, on September 3rd in Beijing, in China. And there you would have the three of them, Putin, Xi Jinping, and Trump. And this would give a tremendous signal to everyone in the planet that the issue of nuclear war would be more or less off the agenda. And the situation in Ukraine will have to be resolved. And the opposition to that would be weakened.
Which is quite imperative, Dina. I think I'll come back to you subsequently to look at the feasibility of this, the Arctic development, given or maybe the practical framework that can be adopted subsequently to ensure that other countries having a geopolitical interest in the Arctic Council do not get, some sort of retaliation that will further, kill the peace that we are looking for. And now we are going again to India, to Professor Jagdish. Today we are looking at the meeting between Trump and Putin that happened on the 15th of August 2025. It was actually a historic meeting for the first time since the launch of the special military operation. And we see, when we listen to Dean and EKEU talk, we are going to see how probably the two leaders met largely for personal interest. But then you see that Trump wanting that rapprochement with Putin or Russia, yet having a huge impact on India. We're talking about the 50% trade tariff. How can you be wanting a relationship with Russia yet blaming India diplomatically or economically for buying Russian oil? Let's try to understand the concept of whitewashing in diplomacy, taking this clear example of USA, Russia, and India, and even other actors present in the situation.
Thank you, Madam, for this perspective on India's effect on this. You see, by the way, this meeting of Trump and Putin happened on 15th August, which happens to be India's Independence Day also. So we were also celebrating that, our Independence Day also, and looking forward optimistically to the result of this. However, somehow it's not clear how come India gets punishment if China is buying more oil from Russia than India, and Trump is getting cozier to China, but being very harsh in statements also and through tariffs also on India. So I don't think this is justifiable or a right thing for to be done to India in this context. However, what I feel is that it is the trade agreement that is in pipeline, which is in the mind of President Trump, so that all these things are just as a pressure tactics to come out with a favorable trade agreement with India and USA. So that may be one of the reasons. But in the larger interest, Indian government has welcomed the whatever outcome has been of Alaska summit and hoped for that it will result into a lasting peace through dialogue and diplomacy. So that is India's stand on this, but there is a lot to be seen in the near future.
Absolutely, yeah. Lasting peace and diplomacy. I'm staying with you, Professor Jagdish. We know that when we come to probably talking about India's diplomacy, we are looking at the policy of non-alignment. We are looking at the policy of multilateralism, among others, or even alignment with the global South nations, with the present states, looking at the U.S. position on India. Let's try to analyze how this is going to affect India's, unique diplomatic standing pertaining the global South, multilateralism, and even, the non-alignment policy.
Yeah, I would like to start with a new theory of AI. So we are in the age of AI, but here what I'm talking is not of artificial intelligence, but AI in a different form. Earlier, what we have seen, the world was having AI, alliances of ideologies. So all the alliances were based on ideologies. That was AI. But presently, now the AI has turned to become alignment of interests. So alignments based on shared interests. So that is the way we are seeing in the whole world. And you see, India is part of Quad also, and India is having deal with Russia also. India talked to Ukraine also, India talked to Russia also, and India is now posing up its relationship with all BRICS countries and Global South. So there's multilateralism in operation, whether tariffs are there or not. But tariffs have helped in BRICS countries coming fast together. So that is one outcome of these tariffs is there. But I think what we are discussing is the war, and this war is creating a lot of casualties in Ukraine, and as we see in Gaza also, and this is something that must stop. So India will always try to use its diplomatic prowess for bringing people, warring people on the negotiating table and help in whatever way it is possible. But yes, we are in the world that is having alignments based on interests.
Mm-hmm. And that actually summarizes the concept of diplomacy. It's about communication, strategic communication and dialogue that suits the interest of nations, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, we are on this platform analyzing the effects of this summit between USA and Russia and how it's affecting contemporary standing of diplomacy. Do you share the same perspective, Dean, with Professor Jagdish, pertaining the definition of AI in line with the contemporary issue that we are dealing with at this particular moment? If you can elaborate more on the Arctic, or developing the Bering Straits Tunnel in Alaska between Trump and Putin, or probably USA and Russia. Hello, Jane. Please, we can.
I can agree with Professor Khatri on the whole question of that we've moved to from an alliance of ideologies to alliance of interests.
Yes, absolutely.
And let's look at the whole question of interest, and in the sphere of diplomacy. And we see that many of these conflicts are not. I mean, let's take the tariff question. This is not, for me, this is not in the interest of the United States, not just from the standpoint of the diplomatic and the effect this has on bilateral relations and the economies, but it's not going to accomplish what Trump wants to accomplish, which is to resurrect the industrial manufacturing capacity of the United States. It is beyond tariffs at this point. What the United States has to do is engage in a new perspective of cooperation in the development of the world at this point. And I bring up the Bering Straits as an example, because if you look at the world over the next 50 years, I believe there are two areas that are basically frontier areas. One, of course, is Africa.
Sure.
And Africa is going to become more and more unified. It's going to be able to exert tremendous influence globally, diplomatically, when it regains its strength, and as far as I'm concerned, become the world's next China, and become the fifth superpower, so to speak. The other area, of course, is the Arctic. And the Arctic is highly rich in resources. It's a transport artery. And it's an area where the U.S. can engage in actual concrete economic cooperation with Russia. And if you build this tunnel, you're building a railroad connection that potentially will go from Cape Town to Buenos Aires via the Bering Straits. And that's a vision that the Schiller Institute has been promoting for several decades now. And if we find the U.S. cooperating in that type of activity with Russia, I think this will affect U.S. relations with other parts of the world in a positive light, in a more positive way. Because the United States is not going to reindustrialize through tariffs. It's going to reindustrialize through investment in high technology, in its infrastructure, etc. And the financial outlook of this administration, because particularly concerning cryptocurrencies, is totally insane, and it's going to lead to a financial crisis. And that's the real weak link in Trump's policy. And either when the situation in the financial system gets worse, it's going to either push Trump in the direction that I was talking about previously, or into a direction that could actually be dangerous. So let me just stop there and we can go on.
Absolutely. Coming back subsequently to you, Dean, as we continue to decode the very compelling issues marking the global diplomacy in contemporary society. And we actually following up the conversation with you, Achille EKEU. When you listen to Dean, you heard him saying that Africa actually will be the main player in the next 50 years, of course, trying to show how the dynamics or the shifting dynamics will affect Africa positively. But then it's often said that when you do not master or maybe know that you have a competitive scope or advantage, it is very difficult to actually make good use of it when the opportunity presents itself. Taking still the recent historic meeting that met with much zest and anxiety, we know that South Africa and other countries in Africa actually already actually suffering from some of those diplomatic decisions, or maybe let us call it strategic decisions taken by the Trump administration. We're talking about the trade tariffs on South Africa, and then the call by Trump recently to ensure that he imposes hard or tough stances on countries having greater alignment with the BRICS bloc. So how can we again understand Africa's position in contemporary diplomatic, let me call it competition or maybe maneuvering?
I think that's a very interesting question that you're asking, Clarice, because Africa, when we look at the continent today, the mindset is shifting tremendously, and it's scaring a lot of the developed countries, because in their mind, Africa, was designed to be the place where they can go and get raw materials for free, pretty much for free. And so that that continent could never develop, and they don't want Africa to industrialize, because doing so will, reduce their markets, and then put too much competition on their companies, because Africa has the natural resources, the raw materials right under its soil. So they don't have to travel miles and buy those raw materials at expensive prices. So we have it, on our soil. So if we industrialize, definitely so many things that we are going to be producing are going to be cheap. And with the young generation that is all over the continent today, they are eager to consume products made in Africa. And they are tired of all these poisonous products coming from Europe and United States, because we know there are so many things that have come to Africa to really destroy the population there. We've seen all these AIDS, all these COVID, and this malaria that no one wants to find a solution for. All these lobbies, in Congress here that are always preventing any solutions coming from Africans, so everybody understands today that Africa, European countries, industrial countries don't want Africa to develop, or to be a society that is competitive with European economy and Western economy. So this is going to be an important step for Africans today, knowing that they have to get themselves involved in the matters of the world, and staying on the side is no longer an option. And so we see different countries in Africa now, Sahelian countries, South Africa, Nigeria, the northern part of the continent. There's so many things that are being put in place nowadays to, let's say, to be a little bit to reorient. Let me put it this way, in a diplomatic way, to reorient the economy so that it's not too dependent on U.S. and Western countries. Let's put it that way. And we know that the leadership in Africa is still the problem, because many of these leaders are subjected to pressure from Western countries, and then they don't have the will or the power to make their own decisions for their people. So it's easy for Trump to pick up the telephone and call whoever in Africa and tell them, hey, we need to do business with you. For example, I heard recently that Trump wants to do business with the silent countries, the three silent countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. But in return, he's asking for minerals from those countries. And so look at this type of pressure that they put on those countries. The same pressure that they put on India and on China, they want to put that on poor countries that are suffering through this terrorism war that are partly financed by those networks from George Soros and others that are financing those organizations to keep the continent from really growing and then making its own decision and be sovereign countries as they should be. So we know all that stuff. So Africa has to find a way to navigate through all these difficulties and create a strong partnership with the BRICS countries that are very open-minded, that are very supportive of Africa's plight, and they are open to doing business with those countries, provided that we don't sit and wait for people to come to us. We have to do our part. We have to go out there and fight, in the same way that other countries are fighting, so we can have our voices heard, we can have our will heard, and this is something that has to be ongoing in order for Africa to come out of the situation that it's in right now, because we have a young generation that is really, really, really looking for jobs. They want to consume. They are very interested in producing their own industrial products, crops, whatever the situation may be. But the resources are very limited. The financing is very limited, and the conditions that are given to those countries to finance the economies are very limited. And so there is a big paradigm shift that needs to happen. There is a revolt, that needs to happen on the continent so that they can liberate themselves. But they're going to need the help of Russia, China, and the BRICS countries to leverage, in order for them to leverage those relationships with BRICS to free themselves from the situation they're in right now.
Talking about revolt, Achille, EKEU, can we say there is need for strong mental revolt? Because when we look at Africa, at this present society, we feel like if there is, you quite mentioned that there is need for a paradigm shift at every level. But then when we go again to the preamble of diplomacy, it's about interest of states. And with all that you have highlighted, I will stay with you to have your perspective on how Africa can, overcome the diplomatic challenges that the continent is facing at this particular moment. To note, Trump is with the mega policy, making America great again, and we have all agreed in our very opposing statements that meeting Putin was largely for the interest of the United States and not particularly Ukraine or even for the European Union or other NATO members. So now let's try to understand Trump's position, using diplomatic maneuvering to have a rapprochement with Russia, and then still being against Russia indirectly by imposing tariffs on India. I think that is quite clear to those who have a clearer understanding of the situation at stake. Let's bring us now to how African countries are engaging in their diplomatic affairs, be it with the BRICS nation. Are they actually putting the interest of the continent first, or probably it's due to shifting alliances living from the west to probably to the BRICS nations, or thinking holistically? Do you think majority of them are thinking practically within Africa, or having a holistic view regarding the end goal of the BRICS nations?
Well, this is important as because the issue in Africa is leadership for most and foremost. I think the issue that we have leaders that are still living in colonial times. They're still behaving as leaders that were put in place by colonial masters to serve the will of those masters. And so in order for us to change completely, we have 54 countries, it's going to take time. It's going to have to require new leaderships. And we see that with the silent countries, when leaders are able to take courageous decisions, join together, be united, unite themselves. In the case of Saharan countries, they created a confederation, right? So that they can combine their forces, because, taken individually, they are very weak. Individually, they are very, very weak. So when they join their forces, then they become very powerful, and so they can have serious partners that want to do business with them to support their needs, to support the building of their economy, of the military, of the weapons that they need to fight those terrorists, and so that's the blueprint, from our perspective, for Africa to be able to fight and then to have its voice heard. Because taken individually, those small countries, you got countries that have 800,000 people, 2 million people, 1 million people here and there. And we are absolutely, we cannot. And then we go to those summits. We have these summits that we go to all the time. France, Africa summit, you got USA, Africa summit, you got Russia, Africa summit, China. What do we go? We go there without any concrete plan, any resolution, any strategy. We go there very, everybody goes there with his own solicitation, his own needs, but we don't have a meeting where we get together as a union, as the African Union, for example, and put together a strategy that we are going to deploy in those meetings so that we can get the result that we're expecting. So that's why I'm saying the blueprint that we see, what's happening inside those three silent countries, is a very important blueprint for Africa to copy, because that's the way we all remember, I think about September, a year or 2 years ago, when ECOWAS wanted to attack Niger, and all of a sudden, Mali and Burkina Faso said, if you attack Niger, you're attacking all of us. And guess what? They backed down. Absolutely. They backed down completely. And so up to until today, they're completely in disarray with that project. And France was behind it. And so we all know that stuff. So it behooves our leaders to really figure out how to work together in unity, and then put together strategies to defend, to defend what's important to them. In our case, we want to have the means to develop our countries. We don't want to dominate anybody. We don't want anybody to be, to feel like, okay, we're taking away their strategic interests, or we're taking away something from them. No, we just want to organize our society. We haven't had a chance to organize our society in 700, even more years, since slavery started, and colonization and new colonizations keep happening today. We haven't had a chance to organize our society. All the constitutions that we have, they're colonial constitutions. Everything that we eat, everything that we do, it's coming from abroad. And so we haven't had a chance to sit down together and then breathe heavily and say, okay, where are we? When is the last time we met together and organized our societies? So since that time we haven't had, so we need to have that possibility of doing that, and in order for it to give us that opportunity to organize ourselves and to structure our economies, we need the backing, the support of powerful countries like BRICS, to come and support us, give us the opportunity, the weapons, because everything here looks like it's military. People only understand the language of force. If we have terrorists that are being sent, financed by Western countries, because those terrorists, they don't come out of nowhere. All right, they have so much money. There's so much money that's being used to fund those terrorists, to buy them bicycles and all kind of stuff and weapons. You got people who have drones today. Or the terrorists have drones today. It's insane. So that means we need to up our game. We need to think strategically now, instead of thinking emotionally and thinking that they're going to be they're going to be very sorrow for our plight and they're going to help us. No, they're not going to do that. So it's time for us to understand that we need to fight. We need to get united and fight the Western. So that's the language they understand. Until we do that, we are going to be in the same situation.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the rules of the game to ensure that you can have your own competitive advantage. And from what you have said, ACHILLE, we can actually say that the leadership in Africa has a real daunting task to be able to maneuver this diplomatic trajectory that is becoming more and more complex in contemporary society. And we are going again to meet you, Dean. While looking at the meeting between Trump and Putin, and accepting now that the conclusion which you actually arrived at, that it was largely to talk about Russia-USA ties. Let's look at how improved ties between let me call it the Trump administration and the Russian Federation for the next 4 years that Trump is at the helm of affairs in the United States of America, how this can alter the geopolitical dynamics of country of Ukraine and even countries in the European Union.
Your microphone.
I agree 100% with Professor EKEU. But the U.S. is also facing the same forces. The British Empire, the French Empire continue to exist and is called the International Western Financial System. And at this point, it's even more powerful than the United States. At this point, because of course Trump doesn't understand this, but that is the problem in the United States. You had a president before World War II and during World War II called Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he took over the country when it was in the deepest depression, and it was in the depression because of the American and the international financiers at that time brought it into a depression. And he attacked those forces. He reorganized the banking system. He called it the Glass-Steagall system, where they divided the banks so the banks could not engage in huge speculation, where you had commercial banks and investment banks. Commercial banks got guarantees for their depositors, but they could not speculate. And the investment banks, therefore, did not have the resources to engage in the type of speculation they're doing now. That system has ended completely. It started particularly with Nixon, when he basically took the U.S. off the gold standard and ended the Bretton Woods system as it had existed up until that time, and what in 1999 the Glass-Steagall, actually even earlier, was totally eliminated, and you had your super banks And you had a financial system that was nothing more than a huge international casino. And that all collapsed in 2008. And it should have been reorganized again in terms of this bank separation, but it wasn't. It was bailed out by the printing presses of the EU countries and particularly the United States. And that's what we're facing with now. And the BRICS are struggling with this problem. And the BRICS are the future of this planet. And this is the paradigm shift in a certain sense. The train has left the station with the BRICS. This has, replaced in a certain sense the not aligned movement, the Group of 77, the South Commission, etc. And it's not going to stop. But it continues to be undermined by this Western financial system. So what my colleagues in the United States are doing politically is promoting this necessary financial reform, which we call bank separation, or the re-implementation of the Glass-Steagall Act, to break the power of these banks. That's one thing. Now, I said we have two problems. One is this is actually more powerful than the United States. Mm-hmm. And the United States, if it's committed to changing, needs allies. And the main allies will be Russia and China. And I think if you have a productive relationship developed between the United States and Russia, and these ideas being brought into the discussion among them, I think we can begin to see that change, because once you get China, Russia, and the United States, and India will soon join. I think this tariff question is untenable, and India is too big a country, too powerful an economy to be pushed around like this, and they should join in with the other three countries and with the BRICS, with particularly what is developing in Africa. We can actually eliminate this the whole IMF World Bank system, the whole Washington consensus, and that's my view.
Very imperative, and I think subsequently I'm going to bring back the question to you, Achille, again from the economic perspective to throw more light. But before that, let's go to meet Professor Jagdish. This time around, looking at some strategic or geostrategic questions pertaining the outcome of the Alaska summit and how it is affecting the balance of power shifting between let's say the United States of America, Russia, and even Europe in the context of the Ukraine crisis. We are aware that in spite of the summit, we saw the European Union very defiant and bent on ensuring that they will continue to impose sanctions on the Russian Federation, and actually did not actually somehow give an option of reviewing their strategic position on the crisis. So let's look at how this is somehow affecting the balance of power in between Russia, USA, Europe, and why not even countries of the global south?
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. You see, Europe is in a very difficult situation now, as I see, because you see, they want to be involved in any negotiations on Russia-Ukraine crisis, but they feel they are being taken for granted. And moreover, what is happening is that Russia is betting upon the fatigue and division between Western countries on this issue. Europe is, even all European countries, though they rush to White House for meeting and all that, but they are not on the same page. While UK and France, they are ready to send even their troops and help Ukraine with weapons also, but other countries, they are not on the same page on for this. They don't want to get involved militarily into this conflict. Moreover, Europe's interests are tied with the security of Europe, Ukraine also. So they want to be a part of it. Now you see, NATO, it suits NATO that the conflict goes on, and they always talk about ceasefire. They don't say it as a peace agreement. And there is a positive shift in Trump's concept from ceasefire to peace agreement that he is now advocating. Now you see, NATO is eyeing mega weapon deals and also mega contracts for reconstruction. And same is the case with the USA also after the war is over. So their interests are there. And but I would like to remind all of us that in February 1945, while the Second World War was about to finish, there was Yalta Conference between Joseph Stalin of Soviet Union, Franklin Roosevelt of US, and Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of UK. And the whole map of Europe was redrawn. Boundaries were changed. The Eastern Bloc was handed over to Soviet occupation, and the Poland was dismembered. All these things were done without involving any of the affected countries. Even Charles de Gaulle, who led French Revolution, French victory, he was also not invited into this Yalta conference. So there are fears in Europe that are with Trump-Putin summit, are we going towards the same era where the boundaries are decided somewhere else and the concerned are not even invited or included in the discussion. So that's why Europe wants to be part of it, any discussion, and I feel that any peace agreement cannot be agreed upon unless you involve Russia, unless you involve Ukraine, and also European Union. So there has to be a meeting of all the concerned to agree to a plan for peace agreement.
Yeah, not only involving these countries, but also putting into consideration the emerging global powers. We cannot actually undermine the presence of China, India, or even generally the countries of the global south, and how they are actually affecting the power dynamics in the global world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just tuning in, this is a Global Insight in conjunction with Globus, and we are here today evaluating or decoding the outcome of the Alaska summit between Trump and Putin, and how this is actually affecting the diplomatic trajectory, or principles of international relations. What can we learn from this, and how can it actually reposition Ukraine and other countries in the European Union who are actually suffering already from the outcome of the Ukraine crisis, to review their position or proxy position patterning the war, given that the meeting between Trump, according to some pundit, actually presented to the global world that it is not actually for the benefit of Ukraine, but actually for the benefits of Trump and the U.S. relationship with Russia, and that brings us again to understanding that diplomacy, it's all about dialogue, interest, and communication that meets primarily the interest of a nation before going holistically to see how in dealing with other countries they can together work towards attaining set objectives. Just to note that we are also running live on YouTube at Narrative Shift and also Facebook Narrative Shift. You can always join us online, share your perspective, your views of what you think regarding the analysis coming from our esteemed panel of experts, and of course questions that you think are pertinent and which they can also answer in line with our topic for discussion this day, looking at two major world powers, Russia, the USA, Trump doing everything possible to ensure that the country maintains its hegemony. But then how possible is that? And it brings us again to another strategic question with you, ACHILLE EKEU. We saw already the outcome, and Russia's position did not change from the points Vladimir Putin had actually brought forth regarding the if should Ukraine and Russia come to the negotiation table to put an end to the crisis, the points actually should be respected. Now let's look at how this meeting actually strategically positioned Putin, not just in Russia but in the global world. We quite are aware that he has been issued an arrest warrant, and we saw the meeting that came and held in Alaska, and Putin went back, of course, to Moscow. So how did this strategically position Russia, especially considering all of these, challenges? Let me see, pertaining his involvement with other countries that are parties to the International Criminal Court, and also some global elites in line with their views on the special military operations still ongoing.
Well, this condemnation or this decision by the international, court against Putin, we know that it was political, right? So it's really not. There is no substance behind it. It's the West trying to, punish or humiliate, President Putin. And so when they saw President Trump, roll the red carpet at the airport, in Alaska. And then greet him himself, and with all the bells and whistles, it was disheartening for them. It was I laughed at it because it's really something that they looked at it as I can't believe it. So you cannot be hating somebody so much, and then your best friend, the guy that you think is gonna be he can protect you, in any circumstances. And then he welcomes that foe of yours, in his country with all the bells and whistles, red carpet, and everybody is happy to see the situation evolve or change. That's why they are so in a difficult pickle. Those European countries, they don't know what to do. They are confused. They are, they don't know what to do, because they are looking for United States to continue to fund this war, to finance this war. And different countries in Europe have different interests, but overall, their interest is Africa. And the reason, from my analysis, that we see all this happening, France is trying to he's the one that is pushing for war, accusing Russia of trying to invade Europe in the next few years. All this stuff that they're making up, it's not working. And all the sanctions, the thousands and thousands of sanctions that they put on Russia, it's not working. They're also trying to put sanctions on its president. It's not working. So what are they left doing? Just it's just a pity to watch them confused, You know, and as Mr. Andromidas said earlier, you know, maybe France is going to go to the IMF, which is expected because its economy is in free fall. You know, and so when we see all this, they don't want to face the real public in Europe. They don't want to face the public in Europe. You know, the lies that they propagated for the past few years about this conflict. They don't want to face the reality. They don't want the war to continue. At least it gives them breathing room to escape accountability from their people. You know, Europeans are going to be mad because they went through COVID. They went through all kind of situations. And, you know, this war was a total lie from the beginning. And so you know, the journalists have been imprisoned. The media has been cut off so that they only hear one voice. So the population in Europe only hears one voice and one voice only, their leaders' voices. And so far, you know, it hasn't panned out. You know, the result is abysmal. It's abysmal. It's a disaster. You know, whether we talk about economy, whether we talk about finance, whether we talk about politics, you know, human rights. Even in Europe, human rights is a problem today in Europe. You know, and it's so in every aspect. You know, don't even talk about the economy, the growth. The growth has disappeared. You know, Germany, who used to be the locomotive, the big economy in Europe, it's completely in a situation where it doesn't know where to go, what to do. It's confused, completely confused. You know, they have no more easy oil that they were, you know, cheap oil they're getting from Russia, cheap gas they're getting from Russia. No, United States came in and imposed, you know, forced them to buy, U.S. oil, and U.S. gas. So they are buying those products at 3 or 4 times the price they used to pay when they were buying from Russia. And on the contrary, Russia's economy has been strengthening because the minute they stopped buying Russia's oil, hey, other countries, you know, took their place. India took the place. China is even more interested in buying more and more and more oil from Russia. So what are they going to do to prevent those countries from buying oil? And you know, and they always try to put, you know, our President Trump, in a situation where he is going to try to protect them, defend their cause. But the cause is lost. There is no more cause in Ukraine. We know the fact. We know the reality on the ground. So there is no way they can win. So I think economically, those European countries are going to be in a very difficult position in the near future. And in the meantime, you know, BRICS countries are evolving. They're growing, you know, in terms of membership. You know, they're about 40% of the GDP of the world today in terms of economy, in terms of the share of the economy today, compared to, you know, 30% from G7s. So they are growing tremendously. And so in Africa also is joining, you know, slowly, but, you know, consistently. Certainly they're joining BRICS, and the BRICS are, you know, I have a feeling that they have a need to protect Africa from these predators from the West, because they see that, you know, we cannot have a country or continent that has so many resources, you know, but it's always the poorest continent on the planet. It doesn't make sense. Something is wrong with that picture. Something is wrong. But for Europeans, they don't seem to bother about that. You know, it's not a problem for them. Especially France. France is really a very despicable country. They talk about human rights. They talk about the country of human rights or whatever. Human rights only counts when it's the people from their origins, not other people, not people from different origins. No, and that's the colonial mentality. You know, it's very funny to hear Macron accuse Russia of colonial, of being a colonial power today. It's a laughable thing when we hear all that stuff and we think, wow, this is unbelievable. So the reason the Europeans are pushing for more wars is because they don't want accountability from their people, and they feel like without Africa they can't grow, they can't grow the economy, and so it's the only option is to you know, push whatever is going to happen, push back whatever is going to happen, and try to, you know, escape accountability. But, you know, sooner or later it's going to happen. The chicken is going to come home to roost.
and the world is watching and looking at how events unfold and how this is going to continue to change the world, the new world order, or lead us to the new world order. In the same perspective, wanting to share Mr. AK's viewpoints with you, Dean, maybe using different words, but then we're still under the aspect of the EU leaders. Trump has been very, outspoken on the position of the EU leaders, and even to Ukraine's President Zelensky. I quite remember him saying to Zelensky, it is difficult to defeat a country that is about 15 times larger than yours, if actually I'm not making a mistake, and also the fact that it is difficult to win this war. Now we want to look at how, if actually EU members are conversant with the present changes marking the international lines. Professor Jagdish said that towards the end of the Second World War, I think there was another conference that actually, people sat and decided on how they can draw the map of Europe. We are in the 21st century. New powers are coming up, new ideologies, and even the existing ideologies are being challenged by the new realities that we have along lines of politics, diplomacy, international relations, and even geopolitics. And we are also very keen and seeing with the shifting alliances happening along these corridors. Now the question is, with these shifting alliances causing somehow potential rift, how can nations, especially in Europe, strategically position themselves to protect interests, since diplomacy is all about interest, in an increasing multipolar society? Jane,
the question is for me?
The question is directed to Jane, please. It seems
okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Well, yeah, I mean, the question is, how do you define interest?
Absolutely.
What are the interests of Europe? What are the interests of countries? I mean, the founder of my publication, Lyndon LaRouche, who I learned to know 50 years ago as a very young man, and he was also a young man at that time, was at the center of interest of any country, of any region of this planet, is the development of the creative potential of the individual human being. That's the center of that's the measure of any economy. And that's the measure of relations between countries. And let's talk about harmony of interest, a term that was created by an American economist in the 19th century named Henry Carey. Mm-hmm. And the harmony of interest is to find that interest, like the interest between Europe and Africa, right? Of course, for the Europeans, for France and England, it's a zero-sum game. Zero for Africa and sums for Europe. But the reality is, what is the strength of Europe at this point economically? And the strength is actually in the machine tool sector of Germany, Switzerland, Austria, France, Northern Italy. And for instance, I was I was looking at a German company called SMS Group. And this company actually produces steel mills. It doesn't produce steel, but it produces steel mills. It produces the technology for the factories. Mm-hmm. Now, Europe should not be so much interested in continuing to produce steel or cars or even airplanes, because any country can do this now, almost. But not any country can produce machines of the type that would go into a steel mill. And this is ideal for Africa. Germany, Europe could have an economic revival industrializing Africa. These companies can build steel mills, and they're doing it. This country, SMS Group, they have an office in South Africa. They're working in Uganda and other countries on steel mills. And that's what should be the common interest. There's another example is Siemens. Siemens produces high-speed trains. It produces gas turbines for generating electricity. And they have a tremendous relationship with Egypt. They're building a high-speed train there. And they built, in 30 months, they built 3 gas-fired power stations, the largest in the world. Each one was 4.8 gigawatts. That almost doubled the electricity capacity of Egypt in 2.5 years. And the Egyptians have, in fact, since then, and that these plans were finished in, I think, 2015, they increased it by another 20 gigawatts. And this is what the European countries should be doing. And this is what rather than, putting tariffs on, quite frankly, low-tech exports from places like Africa and other places, they should be looking towards this type of perspective and find a harmony of interest in terms of their economic cooperation. Now, I think a lot of the business people in Europe, the industrialists, the serious industrialists, would be open to this perspective. And the problem we have, as our friend so well put it, I mean, the political class in the major countries here in Europe are hopeless. They're like actors, because they can't, none of them can think through a policy. They have their advisors, and their advisors are, they're trained in these institutes, and they're totally dependent on their advisor. And they come in, well, what should I say today? This is what politics is in Europe. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to find, and it's already happening, you have, everyone likes to call them the populists and whatnot. And some of them aren't the nicest people. But what they do reflect is, a simmering revolt in the population against, the current political class. Mm-hmm. Similar to what we're seeing in other countries. So I think this is what we should be doing, is putting forward this type of policy. Africans should be telling the Europeans that, we don't want, low tariffs so we can dump our goods. What we want is to industrialize.
That's right.
And, if you analyze economies, right? Two industrialized economies cooperating are far more profitable than a colony and a industrial metropole. And that's what the real issue is. And if we're thinking like 50 years in advance, right? Where does the planet have to be in 50 years? Well, in 50 years has to be at least building factories on the moon, right? And developing resources on the moon, and looking towards going to Mars and exploring and mastering the universe. Now, to do that, we're going to need a new bill of materials, right? We're going to need engineers. We're going to need productive capacity that doesn't exist at this point. We have to go beyond innovation, and we actually talk about inventing new processes and new technologies.
and that is a big challenge for the global European Union. Professor Dr. Jagdish, you may want to comment on the stance by Europe, noting that now, since America is a great player in the crisis, Biden has had his own policies, and then we see a Trump that is more concerned about what benefits the United States, and at this juncture we can see somehow that the EU, even the NATO, they seem to be entrapped in a web which we can see they created for themselves by actually engaging in a more proxy approach in the crisis between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So what do you think with the new realities of a multipolar society, can the EU actually adopt as that a strategy that will help the whole of Europe and even ensure that there is more of a mutual global collaboration between countries, because we are aware that countries are already suffering the consequences of the sanctions imposed by the EU on Russia.
Yeah, madam, I fully agree with the views expressed by Dean sir and Achilles EKEU sir, that European nations, they seem to be a bit confused about their own role, because they are facing a lot of problems. Their economies are down, and the people there, a survey says that most of them are feeling hopeless about their own future. And at this hour, the European leaders, they are trying to keep the war going, and they have been asked to put more money into NATO for defense expenditure, while their own economies are shattering. So it's causing a lot of problem. Moreover, with the unpredictable nature of what President Trump will do next day, they are also in a fix, and so they want to have their own say. They are also worried about their own security, and while Russia seems to be wanting a new security architecture in Europe and bring it to the previous era of Soviet influence. So that is what is troubling EU, and they are just trying to, as it was said, that they are not becoming accountable to their own people, how they are going to take their countries in future. While BRICS and Africa, they are on the recovery path. BRICS is becoming a major force, no doubt about it, and economy wise also they will join hands with each other and prove to be a major force along with China, Russia, US also. So where is Europe heading to? So they must need to rethink their strategies. First, strengthen yourself internally, and then try to influence the geopolitics. That is one thing that should be done. They are asking for putting more sanctions on Russia. But you see the history, the sanctions have not proved their worth. 80% of global population has not put Russia on sanctions. They have not cut relations with Russia. So how do more sanctions will ensure peace? Sanctions may be put by Trump, but they cannot be called a Trump card for bringing peace. And no peace can be, lasting peace can be achieved by supply of more arms or arm twisting. So rather than arm twisting, handshake should be preferred, and that is what I think the Trump-Putin summit tried to do, and let us hope it succeeds. Thank you.
Absolutely hoping that we are now talking a new trajectory of global diplomacy after the meeting between Trump and Putin. It actually came to bring about clarification, especially to the school of thought that since the Ukraine crisis is ongoing, relations between the U.S. and Russia came to a standstill, and like we underlined earlier on, it is imperative to understand diplomatic principles to ensure that nations do not get entrapped in their own web, particularly nations still being very new stakeholders in the sphere of international diplomacy. And at this juncture, we are welcoming Steve GILL, who is joining us from United States of America, to note that he's a political scientist and of course former advisor to the Bush and Clinton administrations. Welcome to the program, Steve, and I'm welcoming you, of course, already with a question. In your perspective, you've always noted that the Alaska summit ushered in a new era for U.S. Russia ties, and now let's try to understand this, how this rapprochement between the U.S. and Russia after the Alaska summit will change the international diplomacy, and how can the other bloc, that is the EU and even Ukraine, navigate the new dynamics patterning the special military operation at the moment.
Clarice, first of all, thank you for having me and including me in another great panel. You always do a great job of assembling great global experts. Before I get to the summit, let me just underline that Dean made some great points about the development of Africa. We don't need to spend trillions of dollars setting up industrial facilities on the moon or on Mars. We have vast territories of property that are undeveloped in Africa that are closer, cheaper, and I'm not really interested in creating jobs for Martians. We could create jobs, prosperity, and peace for Africans by developing those facilities in these vast areas of undeveloped territory in Africa. And Dean made a great point that energy is a key component of that. You've got the Chinese, they're building coal-powered plants, and announcing new ones and completing new ones almost every day. That kind of power development in Africa could develop not only the minerals, the resources, and also the people in a way that's a heck of a lot closer to home than the moon or Mars. So I would underline that Dean is exactly right, that ought to be a lot more of our focus, both in terms of helping repair what was damaged for so many decades by the colonialization of Africa by Europe. Let's make it better for everybody, the investors and those that live there, rather than non-existent people on Mars or the moon. And then I would say Professor Rajid is exactly right as well, that the tariffs have an unintended consequence of being inconsistent. First of all, President Trump is wanting to use the tariffs presumably for parity, for reciprocity, to equalize the tariff imbalances that we've had. But we're now seeing that it's also intended to bring in massive revenue in terms of the tariff funds that are coming in. I think Scott Bessent announced this week that they're expecting $1 trillion in tariff revenue. Two things concern me about that. First, America will get dependent, addicted to that money, and won't want to lower the tariffs and get back to parity and reciprocity and fairness. It'll be a money drive. And unfortunately, I don't think our Congress will have the capacity not to quickly spend that money. So rather than spending down the deficit and the debt and using it to improve the future economy of the U.S., members of Congress are going to look for special pet projects and spend that money as quickly as it comes in. So it won't have the benefits that President Trump wants, nor will it stay there as jobs and companies come back to the United States and those tariff revenues drop as more and more companies build, manufacture, and sell here. So there's an inconsistency there. And then I think with respect to India in particular, President Trump announced yesterday they're going to impose the 50% or put into place the 50% punitive tariff on India to punish them for buying Russian oil. They've been paying, I think it was set at a 25%. It's going to double that to try and not bring reciprocity or fairness or improve relations, but to punish India for buying a commodity that if they don't buy it, somebody else will. It doesn't have the desired impact. And India can go move plants to Bangladesh that will have a lower tariff level, or to Vietnam, which is what China is doing. There's an inconsistency and a contradiction so often with what the Trump administration is doing with these tariff policies that, on one hand are intended to punish Russia. At the same time, President Trump at the Alaska summit seemed to be reaching out to try and find a process of moving forward economically, diplomatically, and certainly personally with Russia. And I'm not sure how supplying more weapons to Ukraine, funding more for Ukraine, and imposing punitive tariffs on our friends like India gets us where they said they were trying to get when they were in Anchorage.
And given Trump's dynamics, so regarding the development regarding Ukraine and other aspects, especially the BRICS nation and the global south in particular, Steve, with you, when you look at Trump, you want to ask the question of where his decisions are actually putting the strategic foreign policy stance of the United States of America. You just mentioned Trump wanting to punish India for buying Russian goods, but then during the Alaska summit, he's praising the rapprochement with Putin, and after that, while meeting with the EU leaders and speaking also, he said if Putin doesn't adhere to the demands of a meeting with Zelensky, he's going to continue to have more severe stance on Russia. All of these statements that actually pertains to the leadership of the United States at the moment, how is it affecting its strategic foreign policy, not just in Europe, but in the global world at large?
I think it's a confusing foreign policy. Not just confuses those of us here, but certainly as people around the world look at the inconsistencies and contradictory policies that are espoused. On one hand, the president is rightly concerned about BRICS as it continues to expand as a competitive group in the international economic battles. And yet everything he is doing is pushing more and more countries into the open embrace of the BRICS nations. And again, that's inconsistent with his stated strategies. The same thing is true with respect to Russia. We have pushed Russia into the embrace of China, that while I will not term them an enemy, they are clearly an adversary economically, diplomatically, politically, militarily. And yet the policies we've followed with respect to Russia the last several years, and have not really dramatically changed it in results yet, is pushing Russia closer to China rather than pulling Russia back into our field of influence. So I think that I think I'm not the only one. I think world leaders are confused about what's the strategy, what's the policy going forward, and I wish I had a better answer for you guys.
Actually, we'll be watching to see what the strategy actually is. Steve, again with you. Now, when we look at the meeting, we attempted to see, we are instead bringing a challenge to the concept of multilateralism that the BRICS nation is championing, BRICS nations rather, championing at this particular moment. Do you share that viewpoint that Putin-Trump summit signifies a shift away from multilateralism towards a more bilateral engagement in line with international diplomacy?
Personally, I liked the meeting in Anchorage because it, to me, also symbolized and signaled a U.S. looking west towards Russia than through the filter of European Union nations. I think anytime you're seeing direct communications with world leaders, you're more likely to have better results than when you're depending on the filter, whether it's your own advisors or others in other countries that have their own agendas that may not fit with yours. By the way, I joked with friends and media here in the U.S. that part of the negotiation between Trump and Putin in Anchorage was that Trump offered to sell back Alaska to Russia, but only if he would take California as part of the deal. And Putin immediately responded, not only net, but hell net. We're not taking California under any circumstances. So I think the personal relationships with Trump and Putin led to the opportunity to move forward. And I think just this week, Russia has announced that there are massive oil deposits in Antarctica, and that President Trump and Putin had some discussions about working together to develop and find ways to bring those resources to the world. I think it was a bit of a trap, in my view, in Anchorage, that a peace deal has been presented to Ukraine and to the EU. They have rejected it. Zelensky's not willing to move 1 inch on the demands that led to this conflict. And I think President Trump is getting closer to saying, look, it wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. If Europe wants to put troops on the ground, go ahead. They've already balked at that. If they want to keep funding it, they don't have the resources. I think President Trump is poised to perhaps wash his hands of the Ukraine conflict and get back to the business opportunities between the U.S. and Russia. And I think it may be a few months, could be by the end of the year. I think that's the direction that U.S.-Russia relations and the Ukraine conflict will head, possibly by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. And we're going to continue the conversation again with our ex-team guest this time around. Let's come back to you, ACHILLE EKEU. Having listened to Steve and other ex-team experts on our topic for discussion, which is actually touching a whole lot of areas, because we are identifying the aspect of diplomacy and how when key leaders like USA, Trump and Putin, when they meet, how it affects the diplomatic standing of the world. In the same line with the question on multilateralism, we want to see and answer this question with you, ACHILLE EKEU. Do you think the Alaska summit and the outcome actually pose a threat to the challenges, I beg your pardon, to the objective of the BRICS bloc, especially around lines of de-dollarization and other aspects? You are muted, please.
Yeah, the objective of the BRICS bloc is opposite to the objective of Americans. So they don't see eye to eye on that. Trump has been very clear about that. But it doesn't matter what Trump thinks. It's what the world through BRICS today thinks about what's happening, and every day Trump gives them more reasons, to stay together. So all these tariffs that he's just he gets in the morning. He hadn't had any breakfast, and then, okay, all right, who is the one that is driving me crazy now? I'm going to add another 10%. Who is the next one? Okay, all right, India. Okay, India. I can do you harm, right? So 50%. Let's take it to 50%. He did that with China. He got to 145% with China. So I don't know what to say. It's just unbelievable, right? So it's just for him like a game. He's having fun. It's like a small kid that have a doll that has and he's playing with it, and it's going to impact the U.S. economy and the world economy in a way that he hasn't even thought about yet. And this is what the Federal Reserve Chair has been saying. I need to see more about the situation in the U.S. economy, because those tariffs that Trump is subjecting the whole world, to it's going to have an effect. And we haven't seen that yet. And, we're starting to see the premises. But what we see is that the dollar is going south every single day. And I check that precisely every day to see where the dollar is going. It's going south. I know you had a little reprieve last a couple of days, but it's going south. And it's not a good thing. It means that de-dollarization is working. The more he tries to isolate BRICS countries together, especially Brazil, he attacked Brazil very severely. He's getting into Brazil's business. It's insane. It's unacceptable. A president that's getting into another country's business, trying to prevent them from, trying to prevent Brazil from, judging a former president who betrayed his country. It's unacceptable. So all these things that Trump is doing, it seems for him is like a game. So when I look at that, so the interests of BRICS, you know, for this war to end are different from the interests of the United States. But Europe is the one that's left, you know, completely lost in all this stuff, right? They're completely lost. You know, they don't have the main support. You know, who was Biden? Biden is not coming back. Biden is done. You know, he's not coming back unless we have another Democrat that comes back and try to revive this war. I think their hope is that you know, this war continues for the next 4 years and until Trump leaves and then a Democrat comes to power and maybe they can do whatever. I don't know what they think they're gonna do, because you can't win when you have no structure, nothing, no economy, no money, no army, nothing. And you're counting on one country, the U.S. The U.S. needs to shore up its own economy. Sure. You know, all the money, all that money that they sent to Ukraine for the past few years, all that money could have been used to take care of U.S. issues. We have so many countries, so many issues in the U.S. nowadays. This is money that's been lost for nothing. We know the results already. Ukraine cannot win. Europeans cannot win this war. It's impossible. They know the fact, they know the reality, but they are dreaming. So the idea is to postpone the inevitable. Mm-hmm. The inevitable is the accountability those leaders in Europe are going to have, you know, from the population. Okay. But those populations in Europe have been lied to again and again and again. And they are dreading, you know, those leaders are dreading the moment where those people are going to rise and ask them, why did you lead us into this war, knowing everybody knew, the media, everybody is talking about the same thing. The media, all the alternative media today are where people get their news. They have been saying months and months and months ahead. Even from the first time, the first day this war started, you know, people knew that you cannot win, you know, a war against Russia. Russia is a superpower. How are you going to win that war? It's impossible. So they were hoping that they were going to destroy its economy, weaken Russia. But they got the contrary. They got the exact opposite of what they were wishing for. It's just unbelievable. They can't fathom, they can't understand this process. But it's too late, and they have to understand it's time to wrap this war up and then and move to something else. Absolutely. Because otherwise they will be destroyed themselves. And I fear there may be soon a war between Europeans, because we see Italy and France are in a battle of titans. You know, they're fighting. You know, France accusing Italy of not sharing. You know, it's you know, the gas that they're getting from their contract with Algeria. They're not sharing it the way they're supposed to. And Italy responding that, hey, you want to go to war, you know, you should be the first one to go to war yourself, you know. Absolutely. So it's like it's a fight between, you know, titans, and we are watching it, you know, and then just enjoying the whole thing, because what is the finality of this? What is the point of all this? Okay. It's just it's meaningless, right? So
hey, Clarisse, can I just jump in and underline my friend
Achille?
Okay, Steve, just do that before I get to the thing. Yeah.
I can hear the popcorn popping in the background in Achilles' house as he just wants to sit back and eat the popcorn and watch this play out. It's not just Italy, it's Hungary and Slovakia. Poland has had to accept 11,000 Ukrainians fleeing their country. You know? As Achille pointed out, they can't fight this war 4 more months, not much, 4 more years. They have no manpower. Over 1 million military-age men have fled, 11,000 yesterday, and yet the Europeans are determined to fight till the last Ukrainian, and they're going to accomplish that if they're not careful. By the way, I love when Meloni is sitting between Macron and President Trump. She's giving googly eyes to President Trump like she wants to date him, and she's rolling her eyes with disgust at Macron. So Achilles is exactly right. There is a split coming in Europe. And save me some of that popcorn, Achille. I want to watch too.
I'm telling you, it's an
Actu-
unbelievable movie.
Actually, the team will be watching and, of course, bringing, because this is actually a great horizon for us to understand these ideologies and changes practically and see how we can re-strategize. And since we noted that diplomacy is flexible, it is actually not static. With you, Dean, we are still looking at the possibility of, how a rapprochement with Russia can have an effect on the diplomatic trajectory of BRICS nations. What are your own anticipations pertaining this? Should Putin and Trump, ACHILLE, EKEU, and of course Steve talked about the Alaska, California. We're looking at Ukraine not winning. What if maybe de-dollarization that is already actually practical? Now, in the line with wanting to fix USA-Russia ties, what if the terms on the preamble for these ties pertains, attacking those strong points brought forth by the BRICS, including de-dollarization, and we know that Russia is a strong force in the BRICS bloc. What anticipation are we giving should such a thing happen, if actually it can?
Your mic.
Hello, Jane. Your mic, please.
Just one comment. You can't analyze Trump too closely from what he says and does. My friend calls it, you could fall into Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, the Europeans are just deranged. So that's one thing. No, I think that if, and of course it's still an if this relationship pans out between Trump and Putin, it can't help but to have a positive effect internationally. Take, for instance, Gaza. I mean, this is the tragedy and the crime of the century, right? We're seeing right before our eyes a repeat of the Warsaw Ghetto. Now, Trump may be supporting Israel now, but I don't think he's very pleased with all of this. And when you talk about Israel, you're talking about not Israel, you're talking about a group of particularly financiers in the United States, in England, that use Israel to further their own interests, like they've done in the past. And it's certainly not in the interest of Israel. And I think Russia and China have hesitated in really going strong on this issue because they feel that this is a U.S. problem and we're not going to solve the problem for them because we still have conflicts with the U.S. But if this pans out and an actual positive relationship develops, and what we will see is some problem solving, and I think that might be one of the key areas that could be solved, because Russia does have influence in Israel. Russia would back up, if Russia backs up the United States or works with the United States with this, I think we could actually see a change. We could see maybe Netanyahu would disappear and some more reasonable people will come in. And I think the same is in other parts of the world, particularly Africa, where the U.S. doesn't have the same interests as Europe. They could solve the problems that we're seeing in the DRC and other conflict zones. So I think if this happens, plus I must say, just the other day, Trump has been saying that he expects to go to China soon. And if you remember the last administration, I think it was the first international leader he saw after the election was Xi Jinping, who came to his home in Florida. So if that happens, then we have a very different dynamic global dynamic of forces. And I think, you know, the question of the BRICS will be resolved. I mean, there's no reason, there's no basic conflict between the United States and these countries in reality.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dean. And then another perspective, let's now look at how Trump stands towards India over ties with Russia, or probably purchasing Russian oil, as help to somehow mend the ties between you know, India and China. With you, Professor Jagdish, looking at how the sanctions imposed by Trump, or maybe Trump's diplomacy of sanctions, has helped to bring India and China closer together, and what you know, analysis can we actually give to this?
Yeah, Trump has actually helped bring BRICS countries more cohesive, and India and China are also posing up to each other. Although there was a problem with China recently when China supported Pakistan in the recent conflict, but still geopolitics says that now India, China, Russia, they should come closer, and that is what is going to happen. Sanctions will never bring any solution, and they cannot be permanent also. So we have no problem if all the efforts, all the endeavors by President Trump bring peace to Ukraine and to Gaza. We can also recommend Nobel Peace Prize to him if really it happens. So peace is more important than the Nobel Prize if it is what he is aiming for. But yes, India, China, Russia, and the BRICS countries, they are going to gain strength day by day and have a say in the Committee of Nations, no doubt about it.
Thank you so much, Professor Jagdish. I think we have just few more minutes to be together. Time for us to have concluding statement. Starting off with you, Steve, because the question is the Alaska summit between Trump and Putin actually writing a new trajectory in international diplomacy, given all the arguments or the points which have been raised in the course of this knowledge sharing discussion? Can we answer that question? Is it actually writing a new trajectory in the international diplomacy, and how?
I think it is, and I think some of it, falls under the doctrine of unintended consequences. And I'm not going to dodge, but I'm going to toss to Professor KHATRI. One of the things that Dean mentioned is that Russia has become more self-reliant. They've taken the sanctions, they've turned inward, they've increased their manufacturing, their self-reliance. And while these punitive tariffs are being imposed against India, I'd be interested in whether Professor KHATRI sees that India, while Professor KHATRI could talk more about this, that India sees Prime Minister Modi heading to China to meet, again, increasing that relationship. As Dean mentioned, the relationships of the BRIC nations are coming together. Is India going to follow the blueprint of Russia and say, hey, why don't we become more self-reliant and less dependent on what we need from the U.S. and follow that Russian blueprint?
Okay, thank you so much. And the same question goes to you, Dean. Concluding with answering our questions, are we already seeing a new trajectory of international diplomacy? And if yes, what do you think are those new, principles that can set in that will help us to live from the old order, world order, to the present day world order? Let's look at how the European bloc is functioning regarding the Ukraine crisis, and then the realities on the diplomatic sphere at the moment.
Well, we're seeing the end of geopolitics, because geopolitics is just a fancy word for an anti-Russian policy, and that was Mackinder's, who they say invented geopolitics.
Yeah.
That was his whole point, was that Russia was the biggest danger to the world, and if that ends, this whole zero-sum diplomacy is going to end, and we're going to see, a cooperative relationships developing, not just among these four powers: India, United States, China, and of course Russia, but also these same four countries working with the BRICS to solve the real problems that this planet is facing at this point. So that's what I would.
Okay, solving the problems that the planet is facing, and of course giving importance to humanity over political or geopolitical interests that pertains largely actually minerals, land, and not humanity. And with you, Ashil Eke, let's look at answer the question from this perspective. Diplomacy, it's also about how nations go about their public interest or public policy diplomacy. And now we're looking at how the Ukraine crisis and even Europe's position has helped to bring about those negative aspects of countries in Europe that were hidden actually from the global world, which mainstream media did not actually present to the world. And if we are already writing a new road, so new sphere of international diplomacy, how then can countries in Europe help navigate this phase, trying to correct the negative space of their public policy to meet the present day demands of engagement diplomatically and otherwise?
I think they have to stop lying to their people. European countries have to stop lying to the people. They have to stop suppressing dissenting voices through sanctioning of media, banning media of different point of views. By the way, and today with the internet and artificial intelligence and all the tools that people have today, independent voices, independent media is the one that is really driving the news today. No one gets in the morning and runs on the TV to try to watch ABC News or CNN. No, because we already know they have the same message. They all have the same messages. If you watch, I have TV here in America, and I watch news in Europe, all over the world. The message of this official media is always the same. It's like they're talking to each other, and in fact, that's what's happening. So, and for me, I would say, to conclude this debate, is that I think this war in Ukraine is actually a good thing, because it's going to save us World War III. The real World War III that we were all fearing. This war in Ukraine has, in a way, taken the air out of that, out of those warmongers, those people in Washington that are really hungry for World War III, because they want to use that as a way to explain the high debt that the U.S. has, $37 trillion. Europe has so much debt. The economy is in a disaster situation. So this war has, in a way, has taken all the air out of the energy that those leaders who want to go to war, those warmongers, wanted to use to drive the whole world into a fight, into a World War III that's not going to benefit no one but a few people, a few bankers, or leaders, whoever will be benefiting from. So I think it's a good thing. At the end of the day, Russia, the South is, the economy has changed. and there's a paradigm shift now today, and the whole continent, the whole dynamics of commerce and leadership and whatnot have changed completely to the South or the BRICS advantage. So that's a good thing for the whole world. Thank you.
Indeed, a good thing for the whole world. And we are ending with you, Professor Jagdish. What is the way forward, given that we are already faced with new realities of international relations and of diplomacy? We know that majority of countries in Europe are against Russia in this crisis because they feel like it's a revenge to for what Russia did during the Second World War. I quite remember when I visited Russia in Rostov, there was a square where I was told that that's where the Russian forces actually defeated the German forces during the war, and majority of them are engaging in this proxy tendency because of revenge. Now that we have new realities, what is the take-home package or the way forward in towards engaging with the global world?
Madam, we are living in the age of interdependence. In the globalized era, no country can survive without help from others. And US needs supplies from China, and India also needs US support, and US needs India's support in balancing the with China. So whatever the present tariffs and all this may be there, but they are temporary. Ultimately, the things will fall down, that everybody needs everybody. And in this interdependent world, now the new reality is that sooner or later we have to have peace, and that is the only thing that's going to be there. So let us pray for the humanity and peace all over.
Absolutely, it's about humanity, it's about sustainable peace that will bring us to living practically the mantra that the world actually is a global village that is suitable for mankind. I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly to the gentlemen who participated as experts in decoding some of the major stakes patterning the diplomatic implications of the outcome of the meeting between the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, the first since the launch of the special military operation in February 2022 by the Russian Federation. Thank you for the great insight, while hoping that this platform continues to create a fertile horizon for people around the global world, and particularly Africa, to understanding the dynamics of the new world order, diplomacy, multilateralism, and how we can navigate while putting personal interest and holistic interest that will suit not the aspirations of politicians or major parts of philanthropists of war, but then the aspirations of humanity, the love for humanity, bringing the world together. Thank you so much to the technical crew for ensuring a smoother run of the program, and we are hoping subsequently to join you again, ladies and gentlemen, for more interesting topics that will continue to widen the horizon for understanding of global politics. Thank you so much, and do have a lovely weekend in the company of our programs. Bye-bye.